Hello and welcome to video on research methodology. This is meant for the UG and PG students of English language and literature. This is to help them to complete their project or dissertation. Research in common parlance refers to a search for knowledge. One can also define research as a scientific and systematic search for pertinent information on a specific topic. In fact, research is an art of scientific investigation. A careful investigation or inquiry, especially through search for new facts in any branch of knowledge. Research is a movement from the known to the unknown. It is actually a voyage of discovery. Research is an academic activity, and as such, the term should be used in a technical sense. Research comprises defining and redefining problems, formulating hypotheses or suggested solutions, collecting, organizing, and evaluating data, making deductions and reaching conclusions, and at last carefully testing the conclusions to determine whether they fit the formulating hypothesis. Research is, thus, an original contribution to the existing stock of knowledge, making for its advancement. It is the pursuit of truth with the help of study, observation, comparison, and experiment. In short, the search for knowledge through objective and systematic method of finding solution to a problem is research. The systematic approach concerning generalization and the formulation of a theory is also research. As such, the term research refers to the systematic method consisting of enunciating the problem, formulating a hypothesis, collecting the facts or data, analyzing the facts, and reaching certain conclusions, either in the form of solutions towards the problem concerned or in certain generalizations for some theoretical formulation. The purpose of research is to discover answers to questions through the application of scientific procedures. The main aim of research is to find out the truth which is hidden and which has not been discovered yet. Though each research study has its own specific purpose, we may think of research objectives as falling into a number of broad groupings. To gain familiarity with a phenomenon or to achieve new insights into it, studies with this object in view are termed as exploratory or formulative research studies. To portray accurately the characteristics of a particular individual, situation, or a group, studies with this object in view are known as descriptive research studies. To determine the frequency with which something occurs or with which it is associated with something else, studies with this object in view are known as diagnostic research studies. Whereas, to test a hypothesis of a causal relationship between variables, such studies are known as hypothesis testing research studies. The basic types of research are descriptive versus analytical. Descriptive research includes surveys and fact-finding inquiries of different kinds. The major purpose of descriptive research is description of the state of affairs as it exists at present. The methods of research utilized in descriptive research are survey methods of all kinds, including comparative and correlational methods. In analytical research, on the other hand, the researcher has to use facts or information already available and analyze these to make a critical evaluation of the material. Applied versus fundamental. Research can either be applied or action research or fundamental to basic or pure research. Applied research aims at finding a solution for an immediate problem facing by a society or an industry or business organization, whereas fundamental research is mainly concerned with generalizations and with the formulation of a theory. Research concerning some natural phenomenon or relating to pure mathematics are examples of fundamental research. But research aimed at certain conclusions, say a solution facing a concrete social or business problem, is an example of applied research. Thus, the central aim of applied research is to discover a solution for some pressing practical problem, whereas basic research is directed towards finding information that has a broad base of application and thus adds to the already existing organized body of scientific knowledge. Quantitative versus qualitative. Quantitative research is based on the measurement of quantity or amount. It is applicable to phenomena that can be expressed in terms of quantity. Qualitative research, on the other hand, is concerned with qualitative phenomena, that is, phenomena relating to or involving quality or kind. Conceptual versus empirical. Conceptual research is that related to some abstract ideas or theory. It is generally used by philosophers and thinkers to develop new concepts or to reinterpret existing ones. On the other hand, empirical research relies on experience or observation alone, often without due regard for system and theory. It is data-based research coming up with conclusions which are capable of being verified by observation or experiment. There are two basic approaches to research: quantitative approach and the qualitative approach. The quantitative approach involves the generation of data in quantitative form, which can be subjected to rigorous quantitative analysis in a formal and rigid fashion, whereas qualitative approach to research is concerned with subjective assessment of attitudes, opinions and behavior. Research in such a situation is a function of researchers' insights and impressions. Such an approach to research generates results either in non-quantitative form or in the form which are not subjected to rigorous quantitative analysis. Research process consists of series of actions or steps necessary to effectively carry out research and the desired sequencing of these steps. First is formulating the research problem. There are two types of research problems: those which relate to states of nature and those which relate to relationships between variables. At the very outset, the researcher must single out the problem he wants to study. That is, he must decide the general area of interest or aspect of a subject matter that he would like to inquire into. The formulation of a general topic into a specific research problem thus constitutes the first step in a scientific inquiry. Essentially, two steps are involved in formulating the research problem: the understanding of the problem thoroughly and rephrasing the same into meaningful terms from an analytical point of view. The researcher must examine all available literature to get himself acquainted with the selected problem. He may review two types of literature: the conceptual literature concerning the concepts and theories, and the empirical literature consisting of studies made earlier which are similar to the one proposed. This task of formulating or defining a research problem is a step of greatest importance in the entire research process. Second is extensive literature survey. Once a problem is formulated, a brief summary of it should be written down. At this juncture, the researcher should undertake extensive literature survey connected with the problem. For this purpose, the abstracting and indexing journals and published or unpublished bibliographies are the first place to go to. Academic journals, conference proceedings, government reports, books, etc. must be tapped depending on the nature of the problem. In this process, it should be remembered that one source will lead to another. The earlier studies, if any, which are similar to the study in hand, should be carefully studied. Development of working hypothesis. After extensive literature survey, researchers should state in clear terms the working hypothesis. Working hypothesis is tentative assumption made in order to draw out and test its logical or empirical consequences. As such, the manner in which research hypotheses are developed is particularly important since they provide the focal point for research. Hypothesis should be very specific and limited to the piece of research in hand because it has to be tested. The role of the hypothesis is to guide the researcher by delimiting the area of research and to keep him on the right track. Preparing the research design. The research problem having been formulated in clear-cut terms, the researcher will be required to prepare a research design. That is, he will have to state the conceptual structure within which research would be conducted. The preparation of such a design facilitates research to be as efficient as possible, yielding maximum information. In dealing with any real-life problem, it is often found that data at hand are inadequate, and hence it becomes necessary to collect data that are appropriate. There are several ways of collecting the appropriate data. Primary data can be collected either through experiment or through survey. If the researcher conducts an experiment, he observes some quantitative measurements or the data with the help of which he examines the truth contained in his hypothesis. But in the case of a survey, data can be collected by any one or more of the methods, like by observation, through personal interview, through telephone interviews, by mailing of questionnaires, etc. After the data have been collected, the researcher turns to the task of analyzing them. Hypothesis testing. After analyzing the data, the researcher is in a position to test the hypothesis, if any, he had formulated earlier. Do the facts support the hypothesis or they happen to be contrary? Hypothesis testing will result in either accepting the hypothesis or in rejecting it. If the researcher had no hypothesis to start with, generalizations established on the basis of data may be stated as hypothesis to be tested by subsequent researchers in times to come. Generalization and interpretation. If a hypothesis is tested and upheld several times, it may be possible for the researcher to arrive at generalizations, that is, to build a theory. As a matter of fact, the real value of research lies in its ability to arrive at certain generalizations. If the researcher had no hypothesis to start with, he might seek to explain his findings on the basis of some theory. It is known as interpretation. The process of interpretation may quite often trigger off new questions, which in turn may lead to further researches. The last is preparation of the report or thesis. Finally, the researcher has to prepare the report of what has been done by him. Writing of report must be done with great care, keeping in view the items like the layout of the report. The layout of the report should have the preliminary pages, the main text, and the end matter. In its preliminary pages, the report should carry title and date, followed by acknowledgements and foreword. Then there should be a table of contents. The main text of the report should have an introduction, summary of findings, main report, and conclusion. Introduction should contain a clear statement of the objective of the research and an explanation of the methodology adopted in accomplishing the research. The scope of the study along with various limitations should as well be stated in this part. The first part should contain review of literature too. After introduction, there would appear a statement of findings and recommendations in non-technical language. If the findings are extensive, they should be summarized. The main body of the report should be presented in logical sequence and broken down into readily identifiable sections. Towards the end of the main text, the researcher should again put down the results of his research clearly and precisely. In fact, it is the final summing up. Work cited should also be given in the end.